I'm going to go ahead with the meeting beginning ritual now. 起立，面向佛堂，参加先鞠躬，一鞠躬，再鞠躬，三鞠躬，参加各位的传习鞠躬，开班一鞠躬，请坐下。Please be seated. Let's go to the next slide. Tackle the questions. Qingkou. What is the Qingkou ritual? So as I mentioned, multiple people asked a question. They all asked the question in different ways. So what I did was that I took the intersection. Each one of them asked a question, asked a whole bunch of questions in regards to Qingkou. I took the questions that were common to all three, and those are the ones that I will respond to publicly. So Qingkou, what is that? So as you can see, we've got two characters. Qing and that means cleansing. Kou, that means the mouth. So it is a ritual to cleanse the mouth. What does that mean? Here's the pinyin. In pinyin, remember the system is very, it's widely used, it's official, but it's very much imperfect. So a lot of times people don't know that when you have Q at the beginning of a word like this, it's actually CH. A native English speaker without knowledge of the pinyin system will look at that and say, what, queen or king? You know, king, like make it like K. Yeah, make it like K. They wouldn't think of CH for Qing, but that's what the rules dictate. And then Kou, it's actually, so if you sound it out, it's Kou. That's it in Chinese. What they're trying to do with the pinyin system is they're trying to depict the very faint closing sound, Kou. That's actually not really vital for that to be there. So the sounding like, this is actually what native English speakers will relate to a lot more, Qingkou. That's what it sounds like exactly in Chinese. So pinyin system, sometimes it's helpful, sometimes it is not. So the purpose of the Qingkou ritual is to commit oneself to the discipline of cleansing the mouth. And that has two aspects, going out and coming in. As far as coming in, it's about what you consume. And that means vegetarianism, no smoking, alcohol, or drugs. Now, vegetarianism, I should say that the Chinese style of vegetarianism includes the rule to not consume onion or garlic. And people always ask, well, why is that? Why do you even have that rule? Onion and garlic, I mean, when I consume that, it's supposed to confer health benefits, and it doesn't involve the killing of any animals. So why should I avoid eating onion and garlic? So the answer is that it's a very old rule, and it was originally meant just for the Buddhist monks who have sworn off all worldly possessions and desires. When they discovered that when they consume onion and garlic, that it has a mild effect on the mind, that it will cause one to become more prone to having the mind being unsettled or more likely to have desires that arise. So in order to facilitate them in their renunciation of the world, they forbid themselves to have onion or garlic. When you look at it from the health and biological perspective, it is indeed very true that onion and garlic are very much powerful ingredients in promoting health. It'll probably also make sense to you that when you are a healthy animal, when you are a healthy biological entity, that you will have biological desires. That is sort of like they go hand in hand. So over the centuries, the original purpose of that rule to not have onion or garlic, original purpose has been forgotten. All that people retain is that you must not have them, and then they invent all kinds of creative reasons for not eating it, such as, well, if you consume onion, you're going to get onion breath, stuff like that. Well, that's not the original reason for that. Even today, the rule has become dogmatic. People don't know why they're following that rule, and they also don't follow that rule exactly. I'll give you an example. When you live in the modern world, once in a while you're going to have ketchup in your food. Maybe it's a sandwich of some kind. Maybe it's something else that's made with ketchup. Well, if you check the ingredients of ketchup, it's got onion powder. That's part of it. That's part of the recipe of making ketchup. And if you buy potato chips, there are many flavored potato chips. It could be barbecue flavor, it could be all kinds of different flavors, and pretty much any one of them that has a flavor added, even if it's done without animal products, it'll have onion powder and garlic powder as part of the ingredients. So the Buddhists, Taiwanese style cultivators know that they should not have onion or garlic, but they still consume without realizing that it's already in the food that they consume. So my suggestion to everyone is to, number one, understand the origin of that. Number two, you're probably not a Buddhist monk. You're probably more concerned about your health, and you probably have potato chips and ketchup every now and then. So my best advice is to not lose a whole lot of sleep over this very dogmatic rule for which people have forgotten the purpose. It's important that you understand the original purpose and the reason for which people say, oh, you shouldn't have onion and garlic, but can't really tell you why. Now, there's quite a bit more to be said about vegetarianism. I'll get to that in just a moment. The other part that's important is what goes out of your mouth, and that is what you express. So when you go through the Qingkou ritual, you are committing yourself to watch what you say, that what you express has to be in accordance with the Tao. And that means falsehoods, misleading half-truths, negativity, rumors, gossip, complaints, criticism, condemnations. Those are all things that you have to control, that you have to edit, that you have to prevent. So it's not just, taking in the unclean things that are bad for your body. It's also watching the unclean things that you can cause to be expressed. So that's the purpose for the Qingkou ritual. Why do you have to go through the Qingkou ritual? The short answer is that you really don't. You don't have to go through it. Most people will never have to go through it. It's optional for Tao cultivators in general. The people that want to become shrine owners, they have to go through it. They have the extra responsibility. They have to serve as an example for other people. So Qingkou is one way to demonstrate that your commitment, your discipline is at a level beyond that of most people. So Bill's gone through Qingkou. Ed has gone through Qingkou. I've gone through it myself. And I'll talk about the reason why I went through it. If you are to become an ordained master in the Kuan Tao tradition, you must go through the Qingkou ritual as well, whether or not you have a shrine at home. So this question, why do you have to go through the Qingkou ritual? My understanding is that when this was asked by my friend from the East Coast, what he meant was, why should someone who's interested in the Tao have to go through the Qingkou ritual? He phrased it like, well, why do you have to go through it? But he meant that. Now, I can also take his question literally, and the literal asking is, Derek, why did you go through the Qingkou ritual? Well, I can answer that question as well. But just understand that my personal reasons for going through the Qingkou ritual may not apply to everyone. I am not saying that everybody has to think like I do. At the same time, I'm also happy to explain, for the sake of clarity, the thinking behind my decision. I just want everyone to be very clear that I'm not trying to convince anyone to think like I do, but I'm trying to answer the question in a straightforward manner about why I thought what I thought. So you can see the 3 bullets here. Number 1, this was something that I wrote about in this article online at Taoism.net called Meet the Meat. And that is, it relates my experience that this one time I went to a Chinese restaurant intending to have lobster. So I was not a vegetarian at the time. Lobster was in season, and I was really jonesing for the way that it was made in the Chinese cuisine style. So I went there, ordered my lobster, and I have forgotten, because I had the lobster for such a long time, I've forgotten that they always bring out the lobster, a live lobster, in a plastic bucket for me to look at. And the idea is that, sir, here's the lobster that we're going to cook for you. See how fresh it is, okay? And is it satisfactory, Mr. Customer? And my role was to look at it and then say, yes, go ahead, proceed. I'd be like, Captain Picard, engage with the lobster cooking, warp 10, right? So I forgot about that. And so it took me by surprise. I looked in the bucket. I saw the lobster. The lobster had the claws all rubber banded, so it wouldn't inadvertently hurt the chef. And it was moving. It had no idea that it was about to die. So I made, probably because of that moment of surprise, I was unprepared to look at the lobster, and I felt a momentary connection with the lobster. Like, oh, poor lobster, you poor little thing, you. That little connection for me, was all it took to suddenly make me lose my appetite. I didn't want to eat that lobster anymore. But the order had been placed. I was even as the waiter was taking the lobster back to the kitchen, I was thinking, you would, little lobster, you would feel so much better if you were back in the ocean, swimming freely, scavenging like you normally do. I am very sorry, I'm going to be eating you, okay? About 20 minutes after that, the waiter came back with a plate of chopped up lobster parts, all cooked, all flavored in the Chinese style sauce. It's delicious, but I didn't want to eat it. And it became flavorless for me because I had that momentary connection with it. So now, as I chronicled in my article, I was raised to waste absolutely nothing. So I basically forced myself to eat the entire thing, but it wasn't as enjoyable as I thought it would be. Now, later on, I discovered, in conversing with other people, that this connection with the animal is the same kind of connection that causes other people to also change their dietary decisions. So there's an actor, well-known actor who plays Farmer Hoggett in the movie Babe. So in that movie, he had to do his acting with this pig, and the pig later on has the computer-generated effects of speaking. But because of that experience, he decided to go vegetarian because he got to know, the animals that he usually ate for food. So personal connection, it tends to decrease your desire to want to consume. If you take a look at movies, there's an animated cartoon, Madagascar. The main plot is about the lion, being sent to Africa. He's got good friends from the zoo. And when he was at the zoo, he was served steak all the time, so food was not an issue. But when he was in Madagascar with his friends, no more steak being served. Instead, he's looking at his friends, the zebra, played by Chris Rock, and he's like, wow, you're my friend, but you look delicious. So he's chomping on his friend's leg, and he's like, oh, what am I doing? Okay, whoa, I got to stop. So talking about that same connection, it's the reason why we would never contemplate eating our pets. Dogs and cats, eating dogs and cats considered to be quite savage and barbaric, and I agree. I would only point out that there are also people who keep pigs as pets, and pork, certainly something that we still consume. What's a pet? What's not? How about horse? Well, people love horses. Would not consider eating horse meat. Well, there are places in the world where that's actually a delicacy, that's actually a cuisine. So it becomes more and more difficult to draw that line. So for me, I decided that was one main reason why I decided to just drastically reduce my meat intake. Even before I took the Chinko, I had already started to minimize. The second realization, this was after I saw Zuckerberg, the founder of Facebook, decided that he would go on a year, he would challenge himself to eat only the meat that he slaughters himself, that he butchers himself. So, my hat is off to him, because I would not put myself through such a challenge, because I wouldn't want to slaughter the animal or butcher the animal, even though physically I have the strength to do that. I can wield a cleaver just like other people can, but I find that I am reluctant in the extreme to actually do it. If my personal survival did not depend on it, if I'm not going to die, if I'm not starving to death, there is no way that I can think of a good enough reason for me to do the butchering or the slaughtering. By the same token, I figured that out about myself, and I have all the respect for all the hunters out there that hunt their meat, and they do the field dressing, they do everything. They know what it means. They cannot avoid connecting the live animal to the meat that later on is cooked. I have all the respect in the world for them. I don't want to be them. I don't want to be in that position. I know that about myself. If I had a choice, I'll go pick some fruits. I'll go dig up some roots. I'll just eat that. Anything but to actually slaughter the animal. So once I have figured that out, I also feel that it's not right for me to have somebody else do it for me, like the neighborhood, your friendly neighborhood butcher, for instance, or go to the supermarket and buy these packets of neatly packaged meat. Well, somebody went through the process of chopping the animal up to do that. I'm paying money for the convenience of having someone else do it, but I don't feel good about delegating that task. I'm kind of thinking that if I'm going to end a life, if I'm going to take an animal's life, least I can do is just to handle everything myself, so that I know exactly what it is that I'm doing, what I have done. So I don't want to delegate it. I don't want to do it. And lastly, number 3, I wrote another article. Again, nobody has to agree with anything that I'm saying. You should just go your own way. I'm just explaining my thinking. So the other article is called Meet the Meat Too, and it's about me thinking about what it means to be a biological entity, what it means to be an animal. Human beings are animals too. And so we have waste. We have waste products. We eliminate. We have the quote-unquote number 1 and number 2. So with number 2, we know that it's all in the intestine and it gets eliminated that way. Number 1 is all about the elimination of water. I think everybody's following me, right? Okay, so how does water get? That water contains cellular waste products the body no longer wants, and therefore it has to be eliminated. Well, how does that elimination take place? It's sweat and it's urine. Those are the 2 pathways of elimination. So, question, when is that waste? Where and when is that waste generated? Well, where is all over the body. Every cell in your body is generating cellular waste. Every cell in the meat, in the flesh, in your flesh, is generating that cellular waste all the time. There's water being carried to every single blood cell, every tissue that you have to provide water and also carry away the waste blood works its way to either the surface of your skin or, the bladder. That's what urine is. That's what sweat is. Before it actually becomes urine and sweat, it's all over the entire body. There's not a whole lot of difference between what saturates the flesh and what actually gets eliminated. I'm just talking biological reality. I'm not trying to gross anyone out. This is just the unvarnished truth. If you spend a moment to think about how metabolism actually works in the biological entity, there's no other choice. That's just the way it is. That's just the way it is with us. It's the way it is with animals. When you kill an animal, metabolism stops. So the juicy steak that contains the juice that you felt was so delicious, what is that juice? Think about it for just a moment. What is the difference between that juice and the urine of the animal? Think about that for a moment. So when I have that clarity, so even when I was still a non-vegetarian, even when I was consuming meat, I required of myself the clarity to know exactly what it was that I was consuming. I was consuming meat that contained that stuff. Okay? That's just reality. That's just what it was. So knowing that made me even less likely to want to consume more. Now, for those of you who are not vegetarians, my only advice to you is to make your choice intelligently. I am not talking about urine anymore. I'm talking about feces. I would urge you to not consume feces. Now, you would say, well, of course I'm not consuming feces. What an odd thing to say. Well, I'm referring to consumer reports that came out just a few weeks ago. What the researchers have done is that they went and bought 300 packets of ground beef from hundreds of different stores all across the U.S. And they tested all of them. This is ground beef we're talking about. In every package of ground beef, regardless of where they bought it from, whether it was sustainably raised, whether it was, expensive or low cost, inexpensive or inexpensive, what they found as a commonality for all of them was that they were all tainted with bacteria that indicated that all of these meats were had some feces in them, all of it. So when you're eating hamburger, you cannot help but be consuming that. That's what it is. That's what it comes from. Now, how does it make its way into ground beef? And sorry, a lot of you probably want to tune this part out. It's too gross. It's because of the slaughtering process is not that clean. There's meat that gets tainted with feces. There's intestine that's not properly cleaned. That is how we have the way things are today, where ground beef, pretty much no matter where you get it from, it's always tainted with animal feces. So you're much better off consuming steak instead of ground beef, instead of hamburger. You're better off consuming urine instead of feces. That's my advice. Again, just trying to be real.
Can I add up to that?
Chris, go ahead.
A story that I'm familiar with from many years ago.
Can you do it here so people can hear you? So I'd like to invite my friend Chris to the hot seat.
Thank you, Derek. A story that I'm familiar with from many years ago was I read a lot of science fiction, and I actually write a lot of science fiction. These people are on this ship and they're traveling through space. It's a very large ship, and they come across this planet, and as a higher form of intelligence that they consider themselves to be, they see this planet has these colonies of animals, and so they go to the planet and they slaughter the animals and they consume the animals as their foodstuffs. And as the story progresses, initially it seems like they are humans traveling through space, and they find some planet. At the end of the story, what you find is that it was another species, and what they found was Earth, and they were eating the people. But they didn't have any idea that the people were intelligent, and so they considered themselves justified in consuming this lower animal. So consider from a philosophical perspective what makes an animal a lower animal, and what makes a person a higher animal, to be able to make that decision that they should consume the lower animal as foodstuffs. And so that was my story. Thank you.
I can send you information on that. So another question that came up was what is in the ritual?
How long?
The ritual itself is very short. It's there's there's the offering that happens before that. There's the invitation ritual that happens before that to invite the divine entities to witness the ritual. But the actual ritual itself it's only like 5-10 minutes. I do have a complete translation of that ritual that I can send around to different people.
So this is a formal ritual, and if I did these things naturally, it would be a lifestyle?
Correct. You don't, again, nobody has to go through Qingkou ritual. You could just like decide that, well, I'm going to reduce my meat intake today, or I'm going to become vegetarian, whatever you want to do for yourself. You don't need a ritual to do that. The ritual is just like a public commitment. That's really all there is to it. So because the ritual is a public commitment, question, what are the benefits of going through the Qingkou ritual? This question was asked 3 different ways by 3 different people. So my answer is that, well, my first answer to them was, well, no real benefits whatsoever. So you don't really have a compelling reason to go through with it. But then I thought about a better answer, that spiritual merit in making a public commitment, it puts you, it creates the potential in you to become someone who can possibly influence other people in a positive way. Second bullet, very important. No, indeed, you will not gain any supernatural powers by going through the ritual. Okay, it's not going to make you spiritually powerful or anything like that, except that when you live right in accordance with your conscience, you may feel that you become spiritually powerful, and indeed, you may be genuinely spiritually powerful. I don't know. It's part of your cultivation. Last bullet, vegetarian diet does give you greater mental clarity. So here, I want to be quite clear on the different kinds of vegetarian diets that one can undertake. There are many Taiwanese vegetarians who are consuming no animal products, but they are consuming a lot of fat, and by fat I mean like cooking oil, like all the saturated. Oh yeah, saturated fat. You bet. Baked goods. That could be very vegetarian, but could also be very full of saturated fats. And baked goods is another good example because they're also consuming a lot of sugar. So it is entirely possible for someone on a vegetarian diet to seem unwell or unhealthy by consuming that type of vegetarian diet. A lot of fried foods, for instance.
And often French fries at a restaurant are cooked in animal fat.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, they can cook it in different ways. So you could, for instance, go to like Veggie Grill, then the oil that they use, for sure, vegetable shortening. It'll still come out, being very tasty, but it's still full of saturated fat. And you have to be the judge for yourself as to how much you want in your body. So what I have seen also is that people who are on that kind of vegetarian diet, they gain weight or they can't lose the weight. Sugar is actually a huge contribution to that. The pathway in the body from sugar to transform itself to fat to be stored is probably one of the most efficient processes in the body. Whereas if you consume carbohydrates like even rice or flour like pasta, that actually takes a while. It's a slow process for that to turn into sugar, to be consumed, to be burned as energy. So that's actually okay. So this is the reason why for generations the Chinese, ethnic Chinese people have consumed so much rice, and it's usually white rice. It's not brown rice, but are able to stay slim. It's also why if you talk to athletes who are involved in endurance, stamina-based sports, they want to consume a ton of carbohydrates because they want to store that and let that burn off to help them keep going mile after mile in a marathon, as an example. And then what are the benefits? So vegetarian diet does give you greater mental clarity if you eat the right kind of vegetarian diet. Generally speaking, the vegan diet, that's low fat, low sugar, that has a greater beneficial effect on your mind. So I could get into that in much greater detail, but I won't take up more of your time now. I know that this is not one of the popular topics that I talk about. Let's go ahead and do the meeting ending ritual, everybody. 起立，面向佛堂，持架三鞠躬，一鞠躬，再鞠躬，三鞠躬，持架规则是一鞠躬，接班一鞠躬。Okay, everybody, we are done.
Participate in the Tao meeting by joining us online. For information, go to Taoism.net/Tao